There, Laura.
Hey, Judge Janine, great show tonight. Great
well,
special.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to yours tonight. We all watch it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Judge Janine. And I am Laura Ingraham. Welcome to the Ingraham Angle. We've got you covered from coast to coast tonight with news breaking on multiple fronts. We have an exclusive report on exactly why Jeff Sessions fired former FBI Director Andrew McCabe earlier this month. That's coming up in our next block. And there are reports that young girls, get this, are flooding the accused Parkland shooter with fan mail. What is that all about? We're going to have analysis. And President Trump is reportedly pressing the military to pay for the border wall. Good idea? Is it even possible? We're going to assess that situation. But first, our top story, law enforcement demanding a border wall. On Tuesday's show, I laid out several examples of crimes recently committed by illegal aliens. An illegal immigrant deported 17 times, arrested for a hit and run in San Diego. A machete-wielding man near New Orleans who attempted to kidnap children at a Walmart, and a possible serial killer of the elderly in Dallas. Well, now there's this in Las Vegas.
Suspects involved in these crimes are extremely violent.
10 murders in 12 months. Las Vegas police say all were committed by the gang MS-13.
At least 6 of the 10 victims were kidnapped before they were killed, and their bodies were dumped in the mountain area.
2 victims actually belonged to the gang, known for its zero tolerance for snitching.
All the victims were either shot or stabbed numerous times.
The Department of Justice announced Wednesday that 4 illegal immigrants from El Salvador are charged with federal crimes related to the mayhem in Sin City. And here's how a local pastor who's been trying to reform gang members in the Las Vegas area described the problem.
We're literally seeing the type of third world violence right here in what we're calling a civilized society. We're seeing younger and younger people committing more violent crime, including murder. And so, yeah, that's concerning.
This is a nightmare. This is third world violence happening in America. You bet it's concerning. So how do we stop this? Well, on Monday, 380 sheriffs representing 40 states announced that they had sent a letter to every member of Congress calling for legislation that includes President Trump's border wall. Joining us now for reaction is the sheriff who spearheaded that letter, Bristol County, Massachusetts Sheriff Tom Hodgson, and also Jose Aristimuño, who's a former deputy press secretary for the DNC, is in Miami. Jose, I thought you were going to be here in studio with me. Now you're way over there in Miami. What fun is that? Now, it's good to see both of you. Let's talk about this issue. It's a sticky issue. It's a controversial issue. But, Sheriff, let's start with you. 380 sheriffs. Now, there are a lot of sheriffs across this country, but that's not an insignificant number, saying the border wall is necessary. But we got congressmen and senators in Washington who say sensors and partial double fencing and other technology, drones, that will be enough, along with additional manpower, to secure this border, sir.
Well, first of all, these are people who are sitting in Washington, spend most of their time under the dome there, who have little knowledge about what's happening on the border and what the terrain is and so forth. Look, it's going to be, there are going to be some cyber things. There'll be some visual posts. But the wall is absolutely critical to keep people from getting into this country as easily as they're coming in now. And they've been flooding in by the thousands, as you know.
Jose, I want to go to you on this. DeRoy Murdoch, a few years ago, a columnist for the New York Post, wrote a piece listing the illegal aliens who were caught at the border. This was back in the year 2015. And we're not talking about Mexicans or Guatemalans or Salvadorans. We're talking about people from countries that were labeled by President Obama as terror havens. And this is what they found. This is in 2015. Border Patrol detained from Iran 154, Sudan 81, Syria 57, and from Cuba, then designated terrorist country, 2,281. And then countries of interest included Afghanistan, Algeria, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Nigeria, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, 276, Somalia, 131, Yemen, 71. This is a national security issue, is it not, at the border?
It's a national security issue, Lauren, but we have to be clear on something, and it's this. The only way that we're actually going to solve this, the only way that we're actually going to get the real criminals, we got to deport them. Let me be clear. Anybody in this country who's undocumented, who has committed serious crimes, they need to be deported. The way that we do that is by passing comprehensive immigration reform. Let's actually get the undocumented immigrants who are good people. Let's get them out of the shadow, okay? Let's put them into our system, and that would actually allow people like the sheriff to actually go after the bad guys.
So
that's the way we got to do it.
Yeah, so you're saying the people who are illegal immigrants today in the United States are in the shadows? Because I see them at rallies, I see them at protests, I see them at congressmen's offices, I saw them at the State of the Union. I don't see like a lot of people in the shadows. They're outside at Walmart, they're getting jobs. I mean, they're working. Some are DACA members, DACA recipients. So there are a lot of people who are not in the shadows any longer. They're not really, most of them I don't think are all that afraid of being deported, are they?
Well, look, they're certainly in the shadow economy, even though they pay taxes, right? But
not
they can't participate into.
Jose, come on.
Well, a lot of them do. But a lot of them do, though. You know that a lot of them do.
Well, a lot of them do. A lot of them do. Jose, I think you and I would agree that a lot of employers are abusing these immigrants. They're taking
by
advantage
paying them
of them.
very little money.
They're
Absolutely,
paying them
by paying very little money.
And they're endangering the lives of illegal immigrants crossing the border because they think they can get a job. That's endangering their lives. I'm going to go back to the sheriff.
You and I.
Yeah, we'll go back in 1 second. But Sheriff, you heard what Jose said. What we need is comprehensive reform. This wall thing is a big waste of money, and it's not. People will climb over any wall you put there. Your reaction?
Look, you'll never have comprehensive immigration reform until you deal with the security issues at the border. It's not going to happen. And by the way, this idea of people coming out of the shadows and you need them to report crimes, that's a false narrative. But more to the point is, you have people who are pro-sanctuary saying, bring these people out of the shadows, give them a protective bubble so nobody can identify who they are, particularly there'll be criminal illegals in there as well. And then at the same time, you got Becerra out in California saying, you law-abiding citizens, you business owners, if you dare to cooperate with ICE and work with law enforcement to keep your communities and your businesses safe, we're going to prosecute you. So we want you to go into the shadows and not report anything. It's outrageous and it's ridiculous and it's completely un-American, and it undermines the sheriffs and all the other law enforcement community across this country when we're trying to keep people safe.
Jose, I think one thing that Americans can't get their minds wrapped around is California is such a beautiful state. It's an amazing place. And I took the California bar years ago, wanted to live there, love the state. But it's an odd thing, is it not, when business owners who are paying a lot in taxes, a lot of regulations in California, they're actually made out to be the bad guys when they cooperate with ICE, or they simply report to ICE, or they allow ICE to come in and examine their workplace. I mean, they're the bad guys. And then the illegal immigrants who are released back into society, they're coddled, they're protected, sometimes to go and maim or kill or rape or commit other crimes again. So that's the dynamic. I think people who aren't even political think, wait a second, are they on our side, American citizens and legal immigrant side, or are they on illegal immigrant side?
Look, I understand the debate, but you don't fix that by building a wall that it is a waste of money. You fix that by actually passing some sort of reform into the immigration system. And let me say something on the wall. I'm talking about what the sheriff. Well, let me speak, Sheriff. Like, with all due respect, let me just finish my point here. And something that you said. Under President Barack Obama, we put more boots on the ground than any other prior president in the history of this country. So we've been trying to do this. We've been trying to actually secure the border, and Republicans time and time again don't keep their end of the. They don't keep their end of the promise. They don't keep their end of the promise, and we don't get anything done.
I'd like to play a soundbite. This is Brandon Judd from the Border Patrol Council, who was on our show last week. Let's watch.
I just finished my shift a couple hours ago patrolling the border. I speak with hundreds of agents on a daily basis, and all of those agents are telling me we need walls in strategic locations, and we're going to prove that we need those walls.
Those are the guys actually with the boots on the ground, Jose. They're there. And he said there are literally parts of the border you can just walk right across. Right near the Rio Grande. You just walk right across. There's no barrier. There's just a bunch of, tumbleweeds, I guess, but there's no barrier. He'll just walk right across, and they do. It's a national security issue and an economic issue and a humanitarian issue all wrapped into one.
I agree, and there are better ways to do it. There are better ways to do it with technology, with drones, with people on the ground. We don't need to waste money on the wall. And you know what? Let me say one more thing on the wall really quickly. Instead of building a physical wall with Mexico, I got an idea. Why don't we build a cyber wall with Russia? That's the real threat, not Mexico. Let's look to the other side.
I love the fact that you, Jose, I've got to say, I'm actually going to salute you for getting the Russia reference in. That is that's like a camel sit spin, like in a triple Lutz and a backflip on the ice, all combined. Sheriff, last word quickly.
Laura, while we're talking about different parts of the world, just look at Israel. Look, they have a combination of cyber stuff. They have balloons in the air. They have watch stations. You have to have a combination of things, but we have to have a wall. And this idea of just create comprehensive reform is not going to stop people from coming through. I've been on the border now 3 times, and I watched from an aerial surveillance a guy in the middle of the day take a yellow raft. He's halfway across. He hears the plane up above, looks up at us, scurries back over, and he was going to be back over across that border as soon as we left. And this goes on every single day.
I thought you were going to say, Sheriff, that he looked up and waved and said, "Hi, see you on the other side."
Well, he did. He did, but he didn't use his whole hand when he waved.
I got you. Sheriff Hodgson,
yeah,
Jose, it's great to see both of you. Thanks so much. Have a great Easter weekend. And President Trump showed no signs of backing down at his promise to build a border wall at a rally in Richfield, Ohio today.
Drugs are flowing across borders. We need walls. We started building our wall. I'm so proud of it. We've already started. You saw the pictures yesterday. I said, what a thing of beauty. And on September 28th, we go further, and we're getting that sucker built. And you think that's easy? People said, oh, has he given up on the wall? No, I never give up.
There are even reports that the president is considering having the military pay for the wall through the military budget. Joining me now for reaction, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz. Colonel Waltz, this is a wild situation. Now, the president said that today, that construction is already underway. I think it was the Washington Post, might have been the New York Times, tonight said that's just not true. Nothing's underway. So I don't know what he's talking about. Meanwhile, the American people are wondering, what's going on with national security, with the humanitarian problem, with the economic problem, the strain on our budgets? You see what's going on in California, the homelessness. Why can't we enforce our border? Is there no will to do it? I think the president has a will, but Congress doesn't seem to.
Well, Laura, first, the president is absolutely right. Border security is a national security issue. Look, a pipeline that can move immigrants and can move drugs can also move WMD, can move terrorists, and can move weapons. And we know that Hezbollah is all over South Central America, is working with Mexican drug gangs. Hezbollah operative was convicted in 2011 for working with the Mexican drug gang, the Zetas, in order to smuggle explosives in and assassinate the Saudi ambassador in Washington, D.C. So he's absolutely right substantively. And in fact, the Department of Defense and military, both National Guard and active duty, are supporting ICE, are supporting CBP, and are supporting law enforcement all up and down our border. The issue here is paying for it. And in order to reprogram funds, you have to go back to Congress. You can move relatively small amounts, but in order to move billions, like what is estimated to build the wall, then you're going to have to go back to Congress, and it's unclear there whether he'll have the support. It should have been negotiated in the current bill. Yeah, I mean, it's so infuriating on like multiple levels that was not an absolute must in the omnibus. But we know, Colonel, that Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and many others in leadership and other kind of mainstream Republicans, they didn't want a wall. They didn't want a wall. They're happy with sensors or drones and fences fixed here and there. They do not want a wall. They don't like the imagery of the wall. They think it makes us look like, East Germany. They don't want it. They never wanted it. Trump ran on it and won in part on that wall, in large part on that wall. And I think come hell or high water, he's got to make sure that thing's built for his own political future and for the country's safety, more importantly. Well, Laura, there is this interesting question of, can he declare this a national emergency of what's going on our border? And, much like what happens in a hurricane or another natural disaster or riots, and federalize troops, federalize the National Guard, and use them in this case. But again, what happens in those cases is there's a quick conversation with Congress, and the president moves forward under his executive authority, and then they appropriate it later. So, there is a lot of discussion of whether he can just declare this a national emergency and do it. But again, you've got that
you think they're going to tie him up in the courts?
And you've got this appropriation. You've got this appropriation issue.
They're going to sue him.
Right.
They're going to try to sue the administration, a preliminary injunction, get injunctive relief, stop him from doing that. It's going to get all tied up. They're going to forum shop.
At the end of the day, he's absolutely right, but it should have been negeutiated in the bill. Congress has the power of the purse.
And Mattis, I can't imagine Mattis is wild about this. They talked about it. Apparently, the spokesman confirmed that it was discussed. I think they're running it past the general counsel. I think that's window dressing to kind of placate the president. Mattis doesn't want a wall. I think Donald Trump is one of the few people left in the entire administration who really wants a wall. And his instinct about this stuff is always right. He has the best political instinct on most of the substance. Congress still hasn't caught up to him. So,
Lieutenant, and be clear, DOD can go back and reprogram these funds. He can tell General Mattis, you're going to do it, you're going to go back, and then they can refight this in Congress to reprogram those funds. I think they should do that. But there's a notion that he won't have to go back to the Congress, and to my knowledge, you have to.
Colonel Waltz, the thing about this is that Congress has basically said they're not going to do anything for the rest of the year until, I guess, the next budget fight comes around in the fall. So they're really not going to do anything. So they're going to go on vacation for 2 weeks and do a little naming some libraries. They're not going to do much. So why not take that? Take the substantive fight to Congress, make them defend the fact that they want to leave our southern border open. I think that's a great fight for Trump to take, and I think his instinct is great. We'll close it out.
And he absolutely can do that. He can order DOD to do it. He can order DHS to do it under his executive authority. Again, I want to emphasize the military is already out there supporting this effort and doing a fantastic job. But you just can't. You can't decide you want less planes and more ships and just move funds. But stick it back on Congress and make them do their job.
All right. Thank you so much. And we've got exclusive new info. You're not going to want to miss this. Stay right there about the firing of the FBI Deputy Director, of course, Andrew McCabe, and Congressman Jim to 3 Republican congressional leaders. Sessions noted that special counsels are only appointed in extraordinary circumstances, and that instead he's assigned U.S. Attorney John Huber in Utah to conduct a review of the FBI's most high-profile cases. But first, an Ingraham exclusive. Earlier this month, Jeff Sessions fired Deputy Director Andrew McCabe of the FBI just days before his official retirement, citing an IG report that concluded Mr. McCabe lied under oath and made unauthorized leaks to the press. The public still hasn't seen that report, but joining me now are 2 men whose offices have a copy of the Inspector General's findings. Let's bring in from Columbus, Ohio, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan. And with me here in studio is North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows, also Republican. So let's start with you, Congressman Jordan. What's the headline that's going to come out of this Inspector General report?
Well, we don't know what will come out of that, but we do know about Andrew McCabe that he didn't lie just once, he lied 4 times. So 4 times he lied to James Comey, he lied to the Office of Professional Responsibility, and he lied twice under oath to the Inspector General. And remember, this is Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director of the FBI. This is Andrew McCabe. The text messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page talk about Andy's office, the meeting where they talk about the insurance policy in case Donald Trump is actually president of the United States. So that's why this is significant. And again, it wasn't once, it wasn't twice, wasn't even 3 times. 4 times he lied about leaking information to the Wall Street Journal about the FBI.
Congressman Meadows, he was adamant in his op-ed that his career, speaks for itself, that he was authorized to speak as he did to the press, and yet you guys are saying he's lied 4 times.
Well, I think it's not our words. It's actually the independent investigation that was done by his colleagues. And so when you read it, it's not about politics. You broke the news. Actually, you broke the news right here just a little over a week ago now. And what we're finding is everybody's saying, well, this is political in nature, but when you read the report, you see that it's not political because under oath and certainly with the investigation, it was a real problem. But here's why it's critical. Here's why it's critical. The Attorney General Sessions just talked about extraordinary circumstances. Well, how much more extraordinary do you have to be when you fire the central player in the investigation? That's one critical component. And so we need to have this special counsel. I disagree with the Attorney General, and I can tell you tonight, I went through and reviewed some redacted things that were given to our committee. And on 7 pages, there were 12 material facts, not just names, material facts that were omitted by the Department of Justice. It's time that they come clean and give Congress what we need.
12
material facts. What I'm talking about is, the news broke about the meeting that happened with Dennis McDonough in the White House.
The former White House Chief of Staff for Barack Obama.
That was redacted, but it didn't stop there. When we look at the multiple redactions that are taking place, this Department of Justice is not complying with the subpoena and with the oversight responsibility that we have in Congress. And so for the Attorney General to suggest that there's not enough there is just extremely disappointing.
Congressman Jordan, it sounds like your colleague, Congressman Meadows, is saying that, there was a reason to redact certain information, because whether it was a reference to friendship with Judge Contreras, right, or perhaps information related to McDonough, it doesn't make them look good. And it's redacted.
They've been trying to hide information from us. We have to go over to the Justice Department, go in the room, and have our staff look at this information, come back out and tell us. It's ridiculous. But Mark is exactly right. When the Attorney General writes Congress and says, only under extraordinary circumstances do we appoint a second special counsel. Well, how about these facts, Laura? James Comey's been fired. Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has been fired. Jim Baker, former chief counsel at the FBI, has been demoted and reassigned. Peter Strzok, former deputy head of counterintelligence, has been demoted and reassigned. And Lisa Page, former FBI counsel, has been demoted and reassigned. If those aren't extraordinary circumstances warranting a second special counsel, I don't know what the heck is. So I don't know why the Attorney General keeps postponing this. Everyone in town knows we need a second special counsel to get to the bottom of this. How can Mr. Huber, and he's probably a great lawyer, I don't know much about Mr. Huber from Utah, but how can he investigate his boss, Rod Rosenstein? That's who he reports to. Mr. Rosenstein is involved in all this FISA abuse that we think took place. So you have to have a second special counsel. I hope Jeff Sessions figures that out and names one very soon.
This is what one of your chief critics on another network said under questioning. Let's watch.
Was there ever a strong case for appointing a second special counsel?
No, as far as I could tell, most of the accusations against the FBI are lunatic conspiracy theories, just not grounded in anything. And I think the Attorney General did an appropriate thing here.
Congressman Meadows.
Well, when you look at the facts speak for themselves, Laura. When we're looking at, is it a material fact that Peter Strzok had a relationship with a FISA judge and they concealed it? The answer is yes. Is it a fact? And we now know that the investigation into Donald Trump started late July. Within 7 days, there was a meeting with the Department of Justice where they said the White House is leading this. Within 7 days of that...
Everyone has to understand that, because I think a lot of folks missed that. When this happened the other day, that the White House is leading.
Well, that was in that meeting. We've got text messages that would suggest that. And then within 7 days of that, we have a meeting at the White House with the chief of staff of President Obama saying, we can't draw a conclusion, but we can certainly look at the facts. And the facts do speak to further investigation. That's why we believe that.
Why can't you bring McDonough in for questioning?
Well, I think that would be the appropriate thing to do. But it's not just there. Some of the redactions that the Department of Justice have, they keep the names so we don't even know who to bring in. And so it's important. We've just learned these things recently.
This is from the text, another text that we're talking about tonight, August 8, 2016, struck to Page. Internal Joint Cyber CD Intel piece for D, that refers to Director Comey,
right.
Scene setter for McDonough brief.
Right.
Trainer, head of the FBI Cyber Division, directed all cyber info be pulled? I'd let Bill and Jan hammer it out first, though it would be best for D. Comey to have it before Wednesday White House session.
Yeah, and that Wednesday meeting was August the 10th. We know that. You can go to the White House logs right now and look it up. Jonathan Moffat was there, signed in, did that. So that was on August the 8th of 2016. We know that 2 days later there was a meeting in the White House. So, you know, we're putting the pieces of a puzzle together, but the DOJ are keeping some of the pieces from us.
Congressman Jordan, I want to ask you about a letter that was sent today with Congressman Gowdy and Goodlatte. They seem to heap some praise onto the U.S. attorney who'll be looking into this into these questions. While we continue to believe the appointment of a second special counsel is necessary, this is a step in the right direction. We expect the U.S. Attorney Huber, given his reputation, will conduct an independent and thorough investigation. What reason do you have? I guess he was an Obama appointee, but imagine if Obama appointee actually concluded that there was perhaps even criminal wrongdoing here. That'd be pretty significant versus an unending special counsel.
No. My guess is John Huber's a great lawyer and is going to do a fine job, but it's not a second special counsel. It's not a special counsel, and John Huber has to report to Rod Rosenstein, who is involved in this. Who signed the application? He signed one of the FISA applications. Of course he did. So that's the problem, and
that is a problem.
The simple fact remains, these are extraordinary circumstances. Those top 5 people at the FBI, they were involved in, we should never forget this. They're the ones who put this dossier together, dressed it all up like it was legitimate intelligence, took it to the FISA court, and didn't tell the court the whole truth, namely who paid for the dossier and the fact that the FBI had terminated their relationship with Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier, and they didn't disclose that to the court. So those are all key facts. That's why a second special counsel is certainly warranted under these extraordinary circumstances.
For cases this big and this monumental, this consequential, you can't omit material facts. You have to disclose conflicts, apparent conflicts, the appearance of it. It all has to be disclosed. Otherwise, no one who understands legal matters, at the very least, and many in the public, will not have a lot of faith in this investigation. That's just how it works. That's how it works in legal settings like this. It's crazy.
Laura, it's supposed to be the truth, the whole truth, not part of it, not redactions. And when you go to a court, when you go to the court, you got to give them the whole truth. They did not do that at the FISA court. And it was those people, 2 of them have been fired, 3 of them have been demoted. And we don't think that's extraordinary circumstances warranting a second special counsel. I mean, tell me some fact pattern that would then, Mr. Sessions.
Last word for you, Congressman Meadow. Why do you think Jeff Sessions is so resistant to this special counsel?
Well, I think he's being poorly served. And when you look at it, when I've had conversations with him and the Deputy Attorney General, it's almost like they have a set of talking points that they go to, but the facts don't support those talking points. I would suggest that both of them need to look at the fine details of this, and when they do, they will come to the same conclusion that Jim and I have come to, is it's time for a special.
I don't think Rod Rosenstein wants any special counsel. It's like what's good for the goose is good for the gander on that. I don't think he wants it. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us tonight with this fascinating story. It just gets more and more twisted as time goes on. We invited Andrew McCabe's attorney onto the show tonight. However, he declined, citing a non-disclosure agreement to not discuss the content of the report. And coming up, what's tonight's exclusive information about the firing of Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe? Joining us now to analyze from San Francisco is Harmeet Dillon, an attorney and a member of California's Republican National Committee. From Palm Springs, California, lucky guy, Bobby Chacon is a retired FBI special agent. And here in Washington, Jillian Epstein, who is the former chief Democrat counsel to the House Judiciary Committee and an old friend. Julian, let's start with you. You watched this exchange with the congressman. They are absolutely adamant that a U.S. attorney cannot investigate a set of facts that does involve the man who they would be reporting to, namely Rod Rosenstein.
I think it's a thin read on a special counsel. Let me just talk about the politics here about this for a second. 20 years ago, you and I remember debating a lot about the Ken Starr investigation.
Wasn't that fun?
Bill Clinton, yeah. And look, I was part of an effort to discredit the special counsel then because I think he had really overstepped his boundaries and made a lot of mistakes. And we won that debate. 80% of the public actually agreed with us at the end of the investigation. I thought Starr had done a bad job.
Started with Whitewater, ended with a blue dress.
Absolutely.
Right.
But they thought Starr had mismanaged that and overplayed his hand and done improper things. This is about the fourth attempt to discredit this investigation. There was a Nunes trip to the White House. There were the attempts to discredit Steele. None of them have worked. And I don't think any of this will work either. 60 or 70% of the public still believe that the investigation should continue. As to the particulars of this issue, I think this is a bit of a tempest in a teapot. I agree with Jeffrey Toobin. What we're talking about here is how McCabe described his conversations with his employees, who then spoke to the Wall Street Journal, and whether he was accurate in his. He was perfectly authorized. He was perfectly legitimate for him to have his aides speak to the
So you think the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is staffed with career professionals, that they have a political vendetta against Andrew McCabe? He didn't really lie under oath?
I don't think we have that investigation. The extraordinary thing here...
Well, they did an investigation with the Inspector General.
And we haven't seen it. And the Inspector General's report, the Inspector General report hasn't been issued. The issue here was...
It's extraordinary for them to issue a report those findings were staggering for them to urge and indicate a firing of McCabe. It would never happen unless it was clear-cut. No way.
You know, and I know that there was an enormous amount of pressure from the President to the Attorney General.
The Office of Professional Responsibility isn't getting pressure.
The Attorney General was getting an enormous amount of pressure to fire McCabe, and the reason that McCabe was fired,
he was already retiring.
The reason McCabe was fired was because he agreed with Comey on the obstruction of justice, that Trump was trying to get him to stand down on the investigation.
Oh, yeah, he didn't have
and that was an obstruction of justice.
McCabe didn't have any unclean hands in any of this or appearance of a conflict.
But that's why he was fired.
But let's go to Harmeet on this. Harmeet, you heard what Julian just said. I mean, this tempest in a teapot, nothing here. Your reaction?
Well, Laura, there's a lot there, and what the congressman said earlier in your show doesn't surprise me at all. The fact that there are 4 separate lies gives us more credence to the fact that this was a non-political firing and it was an extraordinary circumstance. So, you know, Andrew McCabe has been under investigation and scrutiny since October of 2016. Some of the things that your viewers may not remember is that starting only 3 days after the inauguration, a call from Andrew McCabe's office is the one that set General Flynn up for the ultimate perjury charge that he has pled to. And then on top of that, there was the incident where he went into Reince Priebus's office and then said, hey, you know, everybody at the FBI thinks this Russia investigation story in the New York Times is BS. And then a couple of days later, we see a CNN leak slamming the White House for that. So his finger is in this pie in many regards. The fact that he lied to Comey, as Congressman Jordan and Meadows just said, is indicative of the fact that there is corruption and there is shocking behavior at the top of the FBI that stems from their hubris and power.
How do you know he lied to Comey?
That's what the investigation just said. That's what the investigation just said. That's a lie.
The congressman who actually read the congressman just read the report.
But none of us have seen the report.
Okay, so the congressman
I don't think those members of Congress are misrepresenting here, so I take them at face value.
The Office of Professional Responsibility. These are not political appointees, Julian. They are career professionals. Bobby, I want to get you in on this. Jeff Sessions said this when he decided not to appoint a special counsel, in part in his letter. In high-profile circumstances involving other politically sensitive matters, it's been more common to make special arrangements within the department to ensure that actual or apparent conflicts can be avoided, while experienced and accountable prosecutors conduct an efficient and appropriate investigation. I mean, I can actually see that argument in his part, but the congressmen are like, no way, the U.S. attorney cannot do a fair investigation.
I'm not a big fan of having a second special prosecutor. I think it's more a form of a function. I think that the FBI agents that are going to staff that investigation are going to be the same no matter what. The same people that are working for Bob Mueller, you know, they're FBI agents. Whether or not they're working for a prosecutor who's called a special counsel or somebody inside the Justice Department, they're going to go ahead. They're going to do their job. Now, hopefully, that we have the element that was there before cleaned out. I don't really see the need. I think the men and women of the FBI are going to be able to investigate that case and bring their evidence to the Justice Department, as long as the Justice Department handles it in the way that we see Mueller handling it, now rather than the way Comey handled it, by not impaneling a grand jury and things like that. So I think that I don't really necessarily see the dire need for a special counsel, but if they have one, fine. If they don't, I think the investigation is going to go forward by very competent people who are going to get to the bottom of it.
Here's my problem with special counsels is that they never end. It just goes on and on and on with seemingly a limitless budget, very little oversight. I know they technically have oversight, but very little. And they, Jillian and I, you're right, we were arguing about this years ago. They go into, it starts off with, well, there's not really a crime, but maybe there's something with Russia, collusion, then collusion goes out the window. Now it's something, a business deal here, or Stormy Daniels, and it's a bizarre deal.
Can I just say why I think Jeff Toobin and others, and Sessions presumably thinks this was a wacko theory? It is because this doesn't even involve the Russia investigation. This involves McCabe's alleged discussions about the Clinton email investigation, which is closed and over. And it's
maybe it shouldn't be closed
and let's just get
That's
some,
the point.
Well, let's get some perspective here. I mean,
closed and over is the whole point, Julian.
Yeah, well, we can debate that if you want. I don't think there was ever a case there, but the point here is that this is an issue about whether he characterized accurately his staff's discussions with a newspaper. Let's get some more perspective. 4 of the people that are running the Russia investigation, Sessions, Rosenstein, Comey previously, Wray, at the head of the FBI, Mueller, are all Republicans. Okay, we're talking 19 people.
The Republicans
are running this investigation.
Most of the Republicans were against Trump, okay? Not Sessions.
They're running this
most
investigation.
Most of them were against Trump.
19 indictments.
They hated Trump.
19 indictments, including 4 people that were close to
They were
Trump.
all ridiculing Trump, Julian, you know that.
Look, the Russia investigation is getting worse for the president.
Yeah.
The question on collusion is getting worse for him. The question on obstruction of justice is getting worse for him.
That's a distraction.
We're out of time, but it would be lovely if the Democrats, for one day, debated something like the economy or trade, which they agree with Trump on a lot of the trade stuff.
I don't.
But that's why you guys lose the Rust Belt.
Let's come on and debate the economy anytime you want.
It is interesting that when all of this information comes out, redacted information, material information kept from investigators, if there's no there, then don't redact the information. Let's find out what Dennis McDonough knew. Let's find out if Susan Rice knew, or the president, what that email Susan Rice wrote on January 20th to herself about how everything was above board. Don't redact stuff that doesn't need to be redacted, and nobody will have a problem with it.
You and I agree on something.
Yeah.
You know what it is? Both parties are guilty of not talking about the economy and the disappearing middle class.
Yeah.
Both parties are guilty of
Well, that's why Trump won, because he's speaking for the forgotten man and woman. Guys, great segment. Why? Oh, this is a bizarre story up next. Jillian, you would love. This is a weird story. Why are so many of these women obsessed and infatuated with serial killers, even when they're behind bars? You won't believe what's being sent to Nicholas Cruz in prison, the Parkland mass shooter, and those details moments away. Crazed women are flooding Nicholas Cruz, the alleged shooter, with everything from fan mail to donations to sexual pictures. And sadly, there is historic precedent for this behavior with other mass killers like Charles Manson, Ted Bundy. Joining us now with more is Ron Martinelli, a forensic criminologist, along with Carol Lieberman, a forensic psychiatrist, who's the author of the book, Bad Boys, Why We Love Them, How to Live With Them, and When to Leave Them. Yikes. I don't want to say we in that. Oh, it's good to see both of you. All right, Mr. Martinelli, let's start with you. What is going on here? I read this. I thought this has to be a joke. First of all, I hate the fact that we have to say alleged shooter with Nicholas Cruz, but we actually technically do have to say that. What gives with these women? What kind of issues do they have? It's mind-blowing.
Well, if I was going to use a big word, I'd say they're enamored with people that practice hybristophilia, or people that do outrageous things to other people. These are clearly women that are off balance. As a matter of fact, they probably share some of the behavioral characteristics of people like Nicholas Cruz, and they tend to become infatuated with people that do horrible things. Rapists, serial killers, bank robbers, and because these people are in prison, it gives the women who are infatuated some distance from these people, because there's an emotional and a physical distance between themselves and the people that they're enamored with. I guess if I was going to use a big college word, I'd say these women were train wrecks.
Dr. Lieberman, you've written a book about this bizarre phenomenon, and you've studied this case in particular. The list of the bags of fan mail he's getting, donations, sexually kind of explicit photos. What is this all about?
Well, Nicholas Cruz is, I talk about 12 different types of bad boys, and he is the baddest of the bad. He's what I call a lethal lover. And so the women who are attracted to him have had the most dysfunctional relationships of all with their fathers that have made them feel unlovable. So they don't really believe that a man, a regular man outside of prison, would find them appealing enough. They need a man who's incarcerated, who, you know, is sort of desperate, and who will depend upon them and they don't feel like they would deserve also like a prince, a really, you know, a good man. So that's part of it. Nicholas is like the perfect combination of both danger, I mean, the sexy danger, the allure, the erotic allure of danger. You know, we know all of the people that he killed, the massacre that he created, and so on. And at the same time, he looks like a little lost puppy. And that brings out the desire from women to rescue him. So it's sort of a combination of this sexy allure and also this need. You know, he looks, we know his sad story.
Yeah, it's a freak show. It's a freak show. I mean, this is a freak show. I'm sorry. This is just, it's so twisted. I think people watching going, it's so sad on so many levels. But you're right, there are levels, gradations of what is bad to the actual evil. You say baddest of all bad, I say evil of all bad boys. We're going to play two things for our viewers and for both of you. This was Charles Manson's girlfriend, and then we have Ted Bundy proposing to his girlfriend. Let's watch.
He is the one that knows what's going on. He's the one that is in the truth whenever nobody else is. Charlie always tells the truth, no matter what.
Carol, do you want to marry me? Yes. And I want to marry you? Yes. And I do want to marry you.
Oh my gosh, we have like no time left. Reaction, both of you, just 10 or 15 seconds.
Well, it's very classic. It's sort of the Bonnie falling in love with Clyde Barrow. I agree with the doctor very much. These people are socially isolated. They don't have any support systems from their families.
These ladies need help. Dr. Lieberman, we'll have you on radio. We are unfortunately out of time, but fantastic analysis from you. And by the way, it's the one surefire way to get a pass from liberals. And it doesn't matter who you are or how checkered your record, so long as you take shots at President Trump. You do that, you basically walk on water. Case in point, the now former VA Secretary David Shulkin. Well, to put it politely, Shulkin's tenure was not exactly the smoothest. Frankly, it was pretty obvious where things were headed from the get-go.
We're having a meeting tonight at what we call affectionately the Southern White House. Seems to be the most convenient location. Everybody always wants to go to the Southern White House. So are you going to be at that meeting? You heard about it, right? It's going to be great.
No, not going to be at that meeting. And I'm sorry it went downhill from there. Shulkin was also, let's not forget, the only Obama-era official to serve in the Trump cabinet, so he's a holdover. Well, that ended up being a big mistake. And his missteps were legion. A scathing Inspector General report slammed the management and patient care at a major veterans hospital in Washington. And the agency blew tens of millions of taxpayer dollars due to poor accounting practices. And Shulkin himself misused taxpayer funds and violated ethics rules, splurging on a lavish trip to Europe. Unclear why that was needed. That is quite a track record. But Shulkin is not going quietly into that good night. In fact, he appeared on no fewer than 3 cable networks tonight, including our own, taking a thinly veiled shot at the president and his administration. In the New York Times op-ed section today, he wrote the following. The environment in Washington has turned so toxic, chaotic, disrespectful, and subversive that it became impossible for me to accomplish the important work that our veterans need and deserve. It should not be this hard to serve your country. Disrespectful in Europe? I mean, And this evening, Shulkin has been alleging a conspiracy from within his own agency against him.
I've been running this department trying to work with both sides of the aisle, but there were some political appointees within my administration that didn't see it that way.
So you think it was Trump appointees within the VA?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, the Trump-hating press, of course, all day long, were lapping us all up.
Playing off of the tagline from The Apprentice, never have to use those words meaning you're fired. Well, not so much.
He had a blistering op-ed in the New York Times this morning, essentially saying how difficult it was to do his job in this administration.
This is a White House in crisis, and crisis might work, and chaos might work when it comes to reality show, when it comes to campaigns, when it comes to governing, not so much.
Now, while bashing the president washes away all liberal sins, the reality is this. What was chaotic, disrespectful, and subversive was the way Shulkin executed his office. Competency